Welcome to the Probate Podcast, where we talk about all the things you didn't know you need to know about probate. My name is Sherri Lund, and I'm so glad that you're here. I want you to understand the process and to know what to expect because it's going to make things easier and it's going to save you money. And I'm here to show you how. Okay, so good morning. This morning, I have the pleasure of interviewing Stephen Green. Stephen is with Tyler and Matterer, the law firm here in North Houston area. He is homegrown Houstonian. He's born and raised in the Houston area, graduated from the Katy area of Mady Creek High School, and he became the first in his family to graduate from college. Stephen graduated from the University of North Texas in Denton and returned to Houston to attend South Texas College of Law, where he received his doctorate of jurisprudence in 2011, and he was admitted to the state bar of Texas that same year. He started his solo practice with estate planning and business law, and that led him to this opportunity with Tyler and Matterer. He joined the Tyler Matterer firm in 2022. Stephen has a passion for working with the elderly and special needs communities. He enjoys spending hours at the Houston Food Bank, and he does other volunteer work in his community as well. He's a member of the Houston Hispanic Bar Association and the Greater Houston LULAC Council. In his free time, Stephen likes to spend time with his family and learning Spanish with his son. So, Stephen, thank you so much for joining me today. I appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule to chat with our audience. And my goal here is to provide a resource for our community so that they can demystify some of the questions and the things that they don't know that they need to know around probate, end-of-life planning, all those things that we'd rather not talk about and think about, but we really do need to. And so I appreciate you being a guest today to explore this topic with me a little bit.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. I'm looking forward to the conversation.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you're here.
Thank you.
So, Stephen, if I was hanging out with you at the Houston Food Bank and we were hot and sweaty, we'd been moving stuff around.
Yes.
We stopped, we stopped for a little bit, picked up a bottle of water and, we're chatting. And I say, so Stephen, tell me what you do. You probably wouldn't rattle off the bio that I just gave. How do you introduce yourself to just the average person?
Sure. So to the average person, what I like to tell them is I'm an estate planning attorney. I'm estate planning and probate attorney. Okay. That's generally what I do. Okay. Of course, I work in business law and transactional work in general, but my goal and what I do is help in planning for the future, planning for the possibility of death or incapacitation. And then also, which goes along with that, is the probate process, which happens once somebody does pass away and distributing their assets. Both practices tend to go hand in hand. And so that's usually my go-to when I explain to somebody what I do. Sometimes it does require a little bit more follow-up because there's just a lot to it.
Yeah. Yeah, there is. And the firm, when I look over the website for the firm, Tyler and Matterer, y'all offer a slew of services.
Yes.
That cover all of this. And you said something just a minute ago about end of life and incapacitation. The end of life is sad enough, but when you've got someone who can't care for themselves and we need to plan for that, that's another service that y'all offer. So those are a couple of things that I see that really distinguish your firm and what you do from other people. Would you say that there's anything else about that?
Well, yes, of course. We do work in the estate planning realm in prevention and preparation. We are preparing for the event that somebody needs a guardian. We're preparing for the event that somebody needs to be handling financial affairs for somebody if they become incapacitated, they're in the hospital, even in the event that they're stuck out of the country for months for some sort
Oh,
of
wow.
It doesn't have to be incapacitation. And then, of course, the main crux of it is planning for the event that somebody does pass away and all the things that go along with that. Part of that is easing the burden on the loved ones that are left behind.
For sure.
They already are going to be dealing with usually a loss, significant loss, and easing the burden a bit on the loved ones left behind is also a big reason why people may want to go forward with estate planning.
Right. For sure. Both of my parents passed away with cancer and we had hospice and we knew that was coming. But even though we knew that it was coming and fortunately they had wills and things in place, but just the shock of it, just one day they're here and then they're not. One day we're thinking about when we need to give them their meds. And then our routine is not what it has been for so long. And so grief and shock, and there's a whole bunch of emotions that come along when
Yes.
someone passes away. I've never thought about being stuck out of the country, but during COVID, there were people on those cruise ships that were not able to come back
Yes.
and their mortgage still needed to be paid and stuff still needed to happen. Wow, you miss one truck payment and you are in trouble.
Yeah, that's 100% correct. I mean,
I had not thought about that before.
yes.
Yeah, so speaking of what I've thought of, before I got so involved in this probate space, when I would hear the term estate planning, I just had this idea that it's for wealthy people, and I don't even know what that number meant. I just thought they have to have a huge house, and they have to have all this property and zillions of bank accounts. Can you talk about estate planning and kind of bust that myth a little bit?
Sure. That is a typical misconception. People think, oh, you're good. It's for rich people trying to avoid paying taxes, or it's for people trying to create massive trust funds for their children or their grandchildren. And I get calls all the time from individuals that say, oh, I just have a house and a car and just my bank account. So I don't really think I need this. And I have to sit down and explain to them, no, this is crucial for you. There's a lot that goes into planning for the future, planning for worst case scenarios. And you do not have to be wealthy to be even significantly have a significant amount of assets. This is crucial planning that anybody with a home, without a home, with any sort of assets can utilize for their loved ones and for making sure that everything is taken care of and that there isn't this large burden that's left with their family members.
Right.
That there's a huge benefit to this. Usually have to push aside those misconceptions and do a little bit of education when clients come to me with that preconceived notion.
Right, right. And even if we think, well, it's just an old car or there's not much in the house, there's still a title attached to that. There's still may be mortgage payments or insurance payments or homeowners dues or car pay, all of that stuff. So the responsibilities of those legal transactions, those contracts that you agreed to complete, somebody's going to have to finish out that obligation or it will be foreclosed or repossessed or whatever. Is that correct?
That, yes, of course. And also too, going on similar lines is a lot of people come thinking, oh, well, I just have two kids. Whenever I pass away, they'll just get a house. And they just think that it's a magical thing that happens automatically, but it is not. There's a probate process to have to go through when you pass away without a will that can be significantly more costly than if you do have a will and take a lot more effort. And it is not this automatic
Right,
passing down of property to children or loved ones. That is not the case.
right,
And so by not doing the proper preparation, you're kind of leaving a much larger burden on your loved ones to try to figure out how they're going to own this property. Oftentimes I get calls where somebody is in a second marriage and their spouse has kids from another marriage and they don't realize, or things are not planned out accordingly, they're going to end up sharing ownership rights with children from that maybe they aren't talking with or they don't really know that well. And it can be a very difficult situation because people have an expectation of what they think is going to happen and it just does not turn out that way.
I was thinking about a woman who inherited a house whose husband had children, and they were anxious to get the equity out of the house so that they could start their business or get another house or use that money that was rightfully theirs. But they shared it with the woman that he married, which was not their mom. And she doesn't have the income to qualify for the kind of life that she and her husband talked about her having. And she's worried about her future and how to care for that. And of course, they are hoping for a better future and wanting. So there's the clash of the titans right there. And there's a lot of pressure on that widow to figure out what to do. And so it's very problematic. And I think a lot of people are surprised when they find themselves in that situation. And that's when they're looking around and saying, what do I do? And why doesn't anybody talk about this? And so that's what we're trying to do here.
Yeah. Yeah. Preparation is key and asking questions is key. What happens if my spouse passes away? What happens if I pass away? What happens if I'm in the hospital for a long period of time? These are questions that you should be asking. If you don't know the answers to them, you should find out the answers.
Yeah. And a lot of that stuff, of course, we don't have crystal balls. So there's no way of knowing. But if we can minimize the possibilities, we do know if we're in a blended family or not. We do know if we have a health condition that's going to require special care down the road. There are things that we do know that we can start to mitigate the risks on. And any plan is better than no plan. That's kind of what I think.
Agreed. Agreed.
Yeah. So we talked about how some of the ideas might be that we don't know what an estate is. And so we've kind of knocked the legs out from under that one. An estate is anything that has a title or property or any value of, what would you say?
To me, anything that has value. So it can
Right.
be anything from a dishwasher to a vehicle to a home to
Collections, art collections or gun collections or,
and to your bank accounts. So these are all locked up together in your estate when you pass away. An estate is basically everything you owned at the time that you passed away.
right. What are some other reasons that you think, or maybe you've heard some reasons why people have waited to come in or have not made a plan?
Well, one of the biggest ones is I'll get to it soon. I get that every day. I've been meaning to do this. So there's a lot of people that it is on their radar, but it is on the very far back burner and that is just not their main focus. And usually what shifts it to the front, a friend passes away, a loved one passes away,
Right.
we see what happens when it affects someone in their inner circle and they automatically say, oh, I need to get this done because I don't want to have to deal with that.
Right.
So that's a big one. The other reason is, oh, I don't have enough things. I don't have enough assets to have to worry about estate planning. Or I'm married, so my spouse is just going to get everything I own anyway. So
Is
I
that true?
no, sir. No,
No,
no.
it's not true. Do you have any examples that you could share?
Well, as we previously discussed, in marriages that are second, third marriages, in the event that there are children from previous relationship, and you own a home together with your spouse, and your spouse passes away, the home does not automatically 100% go to the surviving spouse. That's not how it works. The children will get a share of equity and title in that home. So there are automatic provisions that happen in the state of Texas when somebody passes without a will that leaves children from outside the marriage property of a spouse that's passed away. Just something to be aware of. Now,
Yeah.
and you do have to go through the court process probate in order to change title and get everything sorted out. So yes.
I heard a story about, it was mind blowing to me. This little lady, she's, I don't know, late 80s, early 90s, never married, never had any children, had one small, very modest house here in the Houston area valued at about $120,000. Very modest. She had some siblings. And so she thought, I don't need a will. It's just me. It's super simple. I've told everybody what I want done with my son, like she didn't even have anything written out. And so there was no will. So they had to go to probate, which meant another attorney had to be brought in. So two attorneys, one for the probate case and then one to figure out ad litem. Is that what they call that?
It's an attorney ad litem, correct?
Yes. And so they had to hire this attorney to do the matrix stuff to go back through her family line to figure out who the rightful heirs are. And the state of Texas has this procedure that it goes through, this policy so that everybody gets their fair share. And so in doing that, they look at siblings, they look at nieces, they look at nephews, parents, if they're still alive, which hers weren't, but they kept going. She had a brother who's now is in its, I don't know, 60s or 70s, but at one time he had an affair and had several children nobody knew about in New Mexico. And so now they have to investigate and see Do those children have children? Did she have great nieces and nephews? And it was a year and a half of this attorney working all this stuff out. They found 22 heirs to split this and pay all those attorney fees. And when it was all said and done, there wasn't much of her estate that actually went to the heirs because of all the stuff. But if she had made a will and said, I want my house to go to my sister, said and done, it would have been
Yeah.
so simple.
And that's the Texas intestacy laws. That's the process that you were describing there. And when you pass without a will, you have to go through heirship. And heirship requires an attorney ad litem. It requires them to do research and to delve into your family history and get proofs that, and you have to look at if there was a child that was adopted, they want to know about it. They want to know about everything.
Right.
And it,
I think they were interviewing neighbors and to verify that this is really who it is. And
it makes the process longer and more expensive. Absolutely.
Mhm.
Yes.
For a very modest, simple life, which in her eyes, why would I need a will? And yeah, it was something.
Yeah.
I was one that avoided talking about a will. I didn't want to think about an estate plan. I was really silly about it. Like, don't talk to me about this stuff. And I can't say that I thought talking about it would make it happen sooner. I just didn't want to face the fact that I might not be here someday. And so I didn't even want to entertain that idea. But as I started getting into this industry, and that's a whole nother story, but when I started to think about my children and my husband and what my decision to not face this for them, how how selfish that was of me to do that, just to be blunt. That was something that I had to get over. What would making an estate plan, what would be easier? What makes that process easier?
Well, for some individuals, it is difficult to think about something that is frankly morbid. It is not easy stuff to picture and imagine. And some people take it in stride and some people do not. But to make the process easier is to also have a good understanding of what you own. There's plenty times where I'm going through the process and then I'm working on documents, drafting everything. They're like, I think we have an ownership interest in oil mineral rights or something out of the blue, or I have this retirement account. I forgot about it. It's good to have a full grasp on everything you own, all different assets you own. This includes investments. This includes land that you may own a fourth of somewhere in the country. Whatever it may be, is having a good grasp of everything you own. And in relation to that, also really understanding or being able to convey your wishes.
Yes.
People start talking about who they want to inherit or who they want to be responsible for their minor children or their special needs children if they're adults and they need guardianship. They try to think of who would be the best person to do that. And they don't really have a way of analyzing it. It's good to be able to separate yourself and kind of look at it practically speaking. Who's really the most mature? Who's the most responsible? Who has that child's best interest in mind? And also, who is irresponsible? Who will get $10,000 and go blow it in a weekend? These are things you kind of want to think about before you come in so we can really formulate a plan of action.
Right. And I think as you're talking about those things, I think having someone who can talk about these things with you patiently, who can give you an unrushed time to think about it and to be compassionate about this difficult topic that you might not want to talk to. So some attorneys do not have that personality. They are ready to jump from point A to point Z. And I would say if you're the kind of person that is resistant to going into this, it might be helpful to find some people on your team that will help support you mentally, emotionally, and encourage you to go forward with this important decision.
Yes, and typically in our consultations with clients and doing coaching, explaining what a guardian may be, what the best qualifications of that
Right.
would look like, and what the best qualifications of a trustee would be.
Right.
Kind of going into those so they can really match up the job duties and responsibilities with who matches that in their life.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that that's really helpful. You mentioned who's irresponsible, who would blow $10,000 in a weekend. What are some things that they need to avoid?
Well, part of it is, and so when you say avoid it, if you let things fall to the wayside, you don't do any planning whatsoever, and let's say you have a child or a sibling that is very irresponsible with money, that maybe has some sort of addiction problems, gambling issues, whatever it may be, likely in those events, anything they're left with is just going to be squandered away. We have options of putting things in trusts for individuals like that. Or ultimately, we have options of not leaving them anything specifically because it is not in their best interest to get a large sum of money or property, which may end up being a negative for that.
Right.
So we're going to talk about those things. I talk with clients about relatives with addiction, things like that. And we kind of plan the best way depending on what they think is in the best interest of that person.
Right.
So it is crucial in those situations to really be able to be open and talk about those kinds of things
Right.
so we can plan the best way.
Sure. And then let's say you have a will and you name an executor, and let's just call that executor Joe.
Okay.
And so you petition to the court. When you pass away, the petition goes to the court, opens up the probate file, and the judge says, okay, Joe, tell me what makes you an appropriate executor or whatever. There are some things that would knock Joe off of the list.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like
Felony.
felony. He cannot have a felony. There was one family, this woman was trying to make up a will. She couldn't find anybody in her family that didn't have a felony. Like, she had to keep looking to have somebody on her list. So a felony is one thing that will knock you off. So just because you're named an executor doesn't mean you're going to actually get that spot.
That is correct. That is absolutely correct. And I think a good rule of thumb is one, to not name anybody with a felony in general.
Not a good idea.
A responsible role in your estate planning documents. But also something to keep in mind is I have friends, our clients that choose family friends, that choose neighbors and things like that. And maybe they're estranged from their family or that there's just not many family members left. And I think that is a perfectly fine, adequate choice to make. They can be family friends. They can be neighbors. They can be people that you obviously have a relationship with. It does not have to be family members. It's just
Mhm.
people that you trust and people that would want to help in a situation like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's great. You mentioned special needs and you mentioned guardianship a little bit. When when you're working with, well, let's talk about what Tyler and Matterer do that makes your firm so unique in that regard.
Sure. Well, one thing is we work a significant amount of our time and our clients are in the special needs community or they have family members that are in the special needs community. One of the partners in the fund, Corley, she has a daughter with special needs, so it's very close to her heart and it's close to all of ours. So we work all the time with people in this community. When you specialize in taking care of this community and planning for this community, making sure that they keep their benefits, if they are on benefits, it is just very crucial that you do it correctly to protect their interests. Now, a lot of families who have children or adult siblings with special needs, they come in and they have no clue what to do. And so a big part of what we do is education, as well as performing the legal work necessary to protect their child or adult sibling, parent, oftentimes as well, and making sure that they don't lose their benefits. A lot of benefits that individuals with special needs are on, they have a financial requirement. It's low assets, low income. And if they get some sort of inheritance, they could potentially lose these benefits. So
Right.
we establish trusts and plans and to put in place to make sure that that does not happen. That's a big part of what we do.
I've heard for the elderly, if they have property and they sell their property, that could keep them from getting benefits for long-term care if they need that. And so it sounds like what you're describing is a similar situation, but for people with special needs that need that care when they're in their younger days. Is
Right.
that
Correct. No,
that's correct?
And what you're referencing is long-term Medicaid for the elderly. They're allowed an exemption for homestead, but if they instead cash in their account, they will no longer qualify for long-term Medicaid. So they don't get that exemption for the cash value of the home. Generally speaking, there's some exceptions to
But if
that.
they had rental properties or something like that and they sold that, that would throw them out. So it's a similar thing with if they inherited some money from their parents, that's not the best option for people that are in a guardianship situation.
Correct. And yes, and with individuals that are on some sort of income or asset threshold benefits, we want to make sure we're planning accordingly and also talking with family members too. This is another part that typically falls on the wayside with planning for with special needs planning is we have to talk about extended family members because
Right.
there'll be a grandmother. There may be another relative that says, "Oh, I really want to leave something for this kid if I were to pass away." And
Oh, right.
they don't know
Right.
that they need to put it and leave it to a special needs trust. So they give it outright to them. Maybe it's $5,000, maybe it's whatever it may be. And that can put their benefits on the line also.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's another thing that's a teaching moment for clients that come in is to make sure that they're having open discussions with family members or friends that they need to understand a little bit about how their child's benefits work.
Sure. And as a grandparent myself with a child with special needs, this is a really important topic to me. And as we have made our estate plan, we've thought about what we want to do for her, what we might be able to do for her. But you bring up such a great point that we need to talk to our family members and to the people that we make our plan with to make sure that we're not actually hurting her situation and setting herself up for some major problems down the road and actually do the opposite of what we are hoping to do.
Exactly.
Wow, I'm really glad that you brought that up. And this is why it's so important to not just get the forms from Office Depot or LegalZoom or whatever it is. Please don't do that. Right. We don't want you to do that. We really want you to, and that's the purpose of this podcast, is part of the work that I do too, is to help direct you to qualified people that can really meet your needs, your specific needs, because they are so unique. Every situation, every family is so unique. I have a question for you, Stephen, about I'm thinking of some people that are diagnosed with dementia, early onset dementia. And we have a friend that had ALS, those progressive diagnoses that are not yet terminal, but they don't have a good end to them. And if they have a primary caregiver, do they also need to be thinking about what happens to this spouse that is their primary caregiver? Then who would take care of? Would you consider that a guardianship thing? Are you preparing for that?
That kind of is one of those gray lines because again, it depends on the severity of their condition. Ultimately, we can talk about guardianship as well, which is another area that we practice. And guardianship typically is the last choice in Texas law. Of course, don't want to grant you guardianship. There's other options out there like powers of attorney or other kinds of agreements that you put in place. So when planning for the future with an individual like that, it may be good to start having those kinds of conversations and creating a plan either with us or with other family members or friends to kind of put that in place. Of course, there are benefits that an individual can receive if the condition continues, like there's Social Security disability, there's supplemental security income, there's long-term Medicaid, there's Medicaid waiver programs. So there are programs out there to help those individuals, but qualifying for them is a whole nother topic.
Right, right.
Yes.
Topic for another day, but certainly something to think about, like who is in your family, who's in your world that is vulnerable in a vulnerable position, and they may be cared for right now. It might not be on your radar to take care of them now, but if something happens to the person that is their primary caregiver, who is next in line to step up and do that? And then you mentioned programs. A lot of people, I think, well, I can't qualify for that. I'm just going to have to buck up and just do it all myself. But there are programs that they could apply for.
Yeah, and while we're aware of a lot of the programs that are out there, we don't hold ourselves out to be the experts in all of these programs because there are many of them. But yes, there are a significant amount in the state of Texas that are open for individuals who have medical conditions like this and who need help. A good amount of them have a financial threshold to meet, and some do not. It's just a matter of finding the one that best fits you.
What's a common question that people ask you about estate planning and being an attorney?
I think the common question I get every time is, can I just do this myself?
Right.
I feel like that is a very common question that I get. And the answer is, and I don't tell them straight out, no. I don't want to tell them no because no is technically not the correct answer. The question I think they should be asking is, can I do this properly myself? And then I feel comfortable telling them, likely no, you cannot. Because there are often many different issues that they just do not know to think about. There's just so many things to consider, whether it be there be an underage beneficiary that they want to give funds to, or they need a contingent trust put in place, or whether they have a family member that's with special needs, whether there is a family member that is they want to disqualify for being a guardian for them if something would happen. There's so many dynamics and issues to spot there that printing out something from a book and signing it is just not going to cover. And so that is a common question that I get. And I try to explain to them that if they want effective estate planning and have it done correctly, they really should rely on a professional to help them.
Yeah. So I have to admit that when I agreed really to go along with this whole will thing, my husband got the one from LegalZoom or Office Depot, whatever it was. He printed off the form, and I think he probably checked that we live in Texas so that it's not. I mean, we did know at least to mark Texas, but when we were showing it later, when we had it really done with a professional, she was looking over our paperwork and she said, "Oh, well, here's a problem. You checked independent and dependent for the executor." And I remember talking about that. We were like, "We don't know. We'll let her decide." But that's not that makes like because we didn't know, we would have created a problem.
Yes.
And another thing is when people leave phrases out that need to be included. So it can be small things that can blow up the whole thing and make it a problem.
Yeah, checking the wrong box for independent versus dependent administration is huge. Dependent administration is very expensive and
Yeah.
significantly more costly.
I know that now, but we were dumb and we just thought, well, she can decide. It's not that easy. Like, it's not possible.
Right,
She doesn't get to decide.
right.
Oh my gosh. So that's one of the reasons I'm talking as fast as I can to as many people as I can to so that they're not making stupid mistakes like we were.
Sure. Yeah, I wouldn't say stupid.
I
It's a
know.
fairly common decision that a lot of people make, and it's just uninformed.
Well, yeah, it was for sure ignorant and yeah, I did not know better. Fortunately, we were given time and we took action to talk to a professional and our family did not have to deal with that problem. We corrected that mistake. But so if someone wanted to reach out to Tyler and Matter and to you yourself, I'm going to have your contact information stuff in the show notes. Are y'all on Facebook and social media?
We're on Facebook and we're online. We're not on TikTok yet. I don't know if we will be, but there's so many platforms now. So
Yeah.
we try to limit which ones we're on. But
Sure.
our website pretty much has most of the information that you would need to get from us.
So do you guys do consultations if someone wanted to reach out to you?
Yes, of course. I'm happy to talk with anybody who's interested in getting some estate planning done, who has a probate matter, a guardianship matter, or frankly, if they just have a family member that is a special needs individual and they just have no idea what they need to do and no direction on where to go. I'm happy to talk with them and kind of give us some guidance there on what options are out there and what might be in their best interest with regards to planning for the future.
Good. And so thank you for all that you've shared with us today. Before we leave though, I want to ask you, what is something if someone was on the fence about getting an estate plan put in place and they just were hesitant, scared, whatever it was. What is something that you would like to say to them as an individual, human to human, that might help them come to peace with that?
I feel if they're on the fence about it, it's likely due to fear, ultimately. And just from a non legal standpoint or from a personal standpoint, it's not a great idea to make your decisions based purely out of fear. A lot of times, educating yourself, learning more about what you're scared of will actually help you overcome that fear. And the best way of educating yourself about something you're scared of, for instance, in estate planning, is to reach out to somebody who knows a lot about it and can help you shine some light on it and make it a little bit less scary thing.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's really good. Thank you for that.
Good.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining me today. Stephen, so appreciate your time and the expertise that you obviously have in this field. And I hear the heart behind it. And so as a person that wants to be empathetic and compassionate with my clients, it's one of the reasons I appreciate working with your firm so much. So again, thank you for your time and thank you for the resources that you guys offer our community.
Of course, it's been a pleasure. Thank you so much.
You're welcome. That's all I have for now. New episodes of the Probate Podcast will come out on Thursdays. I also have a free public support group called Houston Probate Support on Facebook. You don't have to live in the greater Houston area to be a member, but I'd love to have you join me there. I'd love to have you join me on any of these platforms, including this podcast, and I'll share the links of where you can find me in the show notes below. I'm looking forward to us connecting. See you next time, and remember, you matter.